Peace, this is Erica, and I'm back to follow up on my initial video titled MGTOW Are Pathetic. So it's really interesting because at first I was going to change the title because I didn't really realize what I had gotten into and just the mass amount of trolling MGTOWs there are on YouTube. I get it, I had watched some other people's channels, but it's really interesting that you don't really know what the population of trolls are until you even just have the title MGTOW in your own topic. It's fine. Like I said, trying to get, eligible for monetization, and someone even accused me, oh, she just wants more views so she can get monetization. Okay, yeah, you dumbass. What are you thinking? Of course I do. So even for those of you that had some negative and insulting comments to say, again, thanks. Whether you gave me thumbs down, thumbs up. A lot of you have nothing to do with your life, or I should say you don't have much of a life is what I mean to say. So you don't have anything else to do but to troll people, and you might not even listen to what they have to say, and you're automatically just rambling off at the mouth with what you assume is a defense to what the person on the channel is saying, but you really haven't even taken the time to listen. I want to be clear that I'm going to distinguish between the 2 or maybe even 3 audiences that might be watching this little show I'm doing here. And the ones who are coming off with the flamboyant, kind of weird insults, not talking to you, because I think you need to go get some serious therapy, and part of the issue is that you may be dealing with your own sexuality where you're not even really sure if you ever preferred women to begin with. You're on some weird, strange, misogynistic, just whole other thing. Not really talking to you, right? Who I am going to address, though, are some of the men who were decent enough to comment in a very respectful manner, and even though they may have been holding their position and defending their position, they were really presenting more of a discussion of the topic, and you could see that even they, in some ways, might be questioning the whole thing. So I'm saying this to say I actually think there are different types of MGTOWs. Aside from the weird, misogynistic, flamboyant ones I'm dismissing, I think that there are those MGTOWs who have joined the group because they feel they need to be part of a group because they have been hurt. And I mentioned this in a previous video. And then I also think there are the very young men who are, because they've come across the hashtag on social media, are following this because they just simply think this is the cool way to go. And it's like almost 2 different groups, right? There's some men who I understand why they have a valid reason for thinking this way. And I mentioned some of this in I want to say part A and part 2A and part 2B. Thank you, gentlemen, who were really just being open for a decent conversation and for addressing the topic of feminism. So I'm trying to really think of where to start here. So feminism is such an interesting topic, and that's why I keep teetering back and forth between whether I'm talking to just general men, all men, and then I'll go back and somehow direct a certain thing towards black men, African-American men, whatever politically correct comment you prefer to use, right? Term you prefer to use. The thing with feminism, let me just address that for the majority of black women, they really never had the privilege to even get into this feminism thing that a lot of white women were engaging in the 60s and 70s, primarily because of our history, black women have always had to work either side by side or in some kind of way. Black American women have almost always had to work. So they were not in this category of, oh, let me fight so I can be in the workforce with the man. They were always in the workforce with the man, right? I think that's where the term womanism came from, because there had to be a separate term for Black women who wanted to be treated fairly and wanted quote-unquote equal rights, but didn't want to be lumped into the same exact category of white feminists because it just simply was not the same thing. Do a little research on that if you're not as familiar with that, and even though I don't always want to break down things in terms of race, there is some validity to that. A lot of our history is just simply different from the average white female's history. It just is. Some guy, you know, I think he was teetering back and forth between giving kind of insulting comments, but not over the top. So this is a Tim Saunders. He's like, shaming language has no power. And I admit, my first video, again, I was just rambling. I was just bored, and I don't really regret it. Like I said, before I go into his comment, I do want to point out that I was really more speaking to a certain type of lazy, or appearing to be a lazy man who's just, I don't know, given up on a zest for life and or just wants to run the whole player dynamic until Lord knows when. Like I said, until one foot is literally in the grave, you're trying to run this whole player situation down, and you just, it's a little pathetic that you don't see the value in commitment. So I don't regret doing that video. So even though it may have came from a little bit more of a, oh my God, you're pathetic and da-da-da-da-da, to some of these men you are, right? But I also want to be clear that I'm not coming from an overly angry, bashing, shameful thing, because this is a discussion we need to have. And again, thank you to some of your men who have, some of the men on here who are open for the discussion. Now, this person says, my grandmother, well, again, people don't write properly. What he probably means to say is my grandmother's pride and joy was cooking for us. When I tried to help her prepare food, she got upset. She told me, how do you expect to be a man when you cook for a woman or anyone else? She was the one who taught me most of gender roles. Okay, Tim, very interesting. And I'm not even going to sit here and say whether your viewpoint is wrong or right, because quite frankly, I'm confused. I think a lot of people right now in 2018 are confused. This is more of a discussion. This is not me on here pretending to be an expert or pretending to know everything. It's really, I'm really trying to invoke just some sort of like thoughtful, you know, let's just really think about this in a good way where we're not just letting mainstream media dictate how we should think. The feminism thing, I don't know. Are we supposed to be put in a box where women cook and clean and women go to work? Apparently that's not working because of the economic system. So if you are lucky enough to be a woman who is home, really being a homemaker in the true sense of the word, like putting effort into making a beautiful home so that when her husband does traditionally come home from work, there's something he can look forward to, an inviting home, a peaceful home, some food on the table. Contrary to what many feminists believe, I'm personally not against that. Do I have the privilege to do that? No. I don't think that in this economic world, unless a couple is really, really making some serious six figures, it's probably not going to always be the best thing. It depends on what city you live in and that sort of thing, but it's very hard to do these days. So decades have a lot to do with it, but I don't want to dismiss Tim's comment because there is some value, I do think, in having roles, but also within these roles having some sort of respect, right? So I think even for some of the feminists that maybe are the white feminists, where they were coming from is don't disregard the effort and their value of what being a homemaker is. Some of these marriages, right, is the man being ultra machismo and abusive and feeling that he has more value because he's bringing home the bacon, right? So because he's bringing home the money, he somehow just managed to completely dismiss what the wife is doing until, of course, maybe she leaves or dies, and then maybe he does see what effort she was really putting into making a comfortable home, but, you know, you don't really know what you have until it's gone. So I do think some of these concepts that certain feminists are coming from, or just the points of views that they have, are valid because being a homemaker perhaps was starting to become undervalued by some men, not all men. And so when this Tim person talks about the grandmother not wanting the man to cook, how are you ever going to be learn to be a man? That's an interesting thing too, because what do you say about men who decide to become chefs? Are they not manly men because they're chefs? I mean, are we not supposed to have any Mario Batalis or any like Emeril Lagassis? I'm not sure, right? Because that's a whole other conversation. Of course, men are called chefs when they're the cook of a restaurant, and women often are not. They're more so just considered cooks. So there's always going to be this ongoing conversation of what's considered feminine and what's considered masculine. Do we need to put certain specific activities in a box and say, this is a feminine thing, this is a masculine thing? This is why you have some fathers who refuse to let their sons play with dolls or anything pink because they don't want to confuse their sons on what growing up to be a man is. Again, am I agreeing or disagreeing? I don't know. The doll thing gets a little weird, right? Because aren't men supposed to grow up to be good fathers? So, man, like I said, I'm not coming on here to be an expert. It's more about having a discussion. And part of why I'm doing this video is because the next video I do want to go live and actually have a conversation with some live people with their live comments. Not you idiots trying to insult and call people names, because you will quickly get banned or just simply ignored, and really you're just bringing more traffic to my channel. So I'm not engaging you guys. But those of you that just want to have an honest and upfront conversation, I'm doing this video so that we can maybe have just a little bit of a just little foundation of what topics we can talk about regarding MGTOW and feminism, and even just the state of the world. I think after a while, I'm going to take MGTOW out of the topic, right, out of the hashtags, because it's really bringing on this weird, cultish, strange group of men I do not care for, except for those of you that, like I said, are being more respectful about the situation. We really have to be careful about media, right? And some of the TV shows we're watching, right, so outside of social media, well, there's the news, there's social media, but right now I'm even just going to talk about television sitcoms. There are a lot of sitcoms that have been out in the past couple of decades where, although they may have initially come off as funny, they're probably scaring a certain type of man because they don't want to end up being that man. A show that pops into my head is something like Ray Romano, right? What was it called, Ray Romano? I don't remember, but you know what show I'm talking about. And even though it served its purpose in terms of being funny, the guy's probably like, oh my God, why does the woman always seem in charge, and why does he seem like a doofus? Right, Ray Romano, even though he's doing it to be funny, he's also portraying this male character who never seems to know what he's doing, and it's the wife who's always the smart one, right? Also, it doesn't really help that Ray's parents were that old couple where, you know, the mother was just like, oh my goodness, this overbearing mother who was always in their house, overweight, perhaps not the most attractive, and then her husband, Ray's father, just came off as this very apathetic guy sitting on the couch because he pretty much just gave up on life, right? He just pretty much gave up. Marie, was that her name? I think Marie, she runs everything. I'm surprised I actually remember these characters' names, but he gave up. He was apathetic. I mean, there were some episodes where he showed he really loved her and he doesn't know what he would do without her, but he was just a dad who oh my gosh, it seemed as though he lost his masculinity. So I think some men, if they're watching these shows, they're really getting paranoid over time. And also, a lot of this is subconscious. They might be watching it and laughing at it at first, but then it starts to sink in, subconsciously or not, that they don't want to be they don't want to be this type of man. We can't really trust all of TV, right? But we watch it for entertainment. Many of us watch it for entertainment. And so if you were going to, I have to delete some things here for me to keep running this video, lovely. If we were going to start talking about some shows, we would probably have to talk about shows that had a better influence, which are things like, sorry, I'm just emptying some trash here, which are things like The Cosby Show, and quite frankly, even The Brady Bunch. I'm not going to sit here and get on some tangent about the current Cosby scandal. That's not the point. We're referring to the Huxtables and what the Huxtables did for American society, especially Black society. And it's really interesting that we talk about Brady Bunch versus The Cosby Show, because the reason why those two shows come to mind is because both of those couples on both of those shows were very respectful towards one another, right? Now with Carol and Greg on the Brady Bunch, they have this big family. He's an architect. She's a stay-at-home mom. But let's not get it twisted. Carol has Alice, and Carol has this maid who's there helping her to clean and prepare dinner. Not a bad thing. Not against that. But note that Greg also had a lot of respect for Carol in terms of her opinions on certain matters regarding the children and certain things. On The Cosby Show, which kind of proves my point about Black women always having to work with their man, Claire was the lawyer and Cliff was the doctor. So they both worked, but they both had a tremendous amount of respect for each other. On that show, Cliff wasn't really emasculated. He wasn't. I don't believe, if I remember correctly, Greg was not emasculated on, the Brady Bunch either. And I know these are two totally different decades and two totally different types of shows, but those are shows that, to me, depict more of a healthy male-female relationship versus a lot more of the modern shows that started to come out where the man looks kind of like a chump. I think it's also worthy to note that although on the Huxtables, I like to call it the Huxtables because I think Bill kind of messed up calling it the Cosby Show. That's why they took it off the air. They should have just labeled it the Huxtables. But anyway, even though Claire worked, I think there's this undertone that if she did not want to work, she wouldn't have to. Right? Because Cliff is a doctor. So it's nice she has the option to work, but she doesn't have to. So that gets into a different topic. One of the people that I do follow, which is so funny because I don't necessarily agree with everything she says, but She-Ra7, if you're watching, I love you. Partly because I love how you're just making money on YouTube, talking all day. You'll come on like, I'm going to do a short video, and then your video's like 3 hours, and people are watching it. So I have to give some respect to you for that. According to She-Ra7, she just does not think women should work, and she thinks all the MGTOWs are broke, and that's why they're MGTOWs in the first place, and I don't know how she would feel about Claire Huxtable working. If you ever watch my show, She-Ra, I would love for you to, maybe answer that question in one of the comments, because Claire does not come off as someone who is not being taken care of by her husband. She just comes off as someone who's living her life and doing what she wants to do. But I digress a little bit. I guess my point was to say, if you were going to be influenced by certain television shows, I would probably be influenced in a more positive nature from those shows, not the ones that are out today. So I don't want this video to be too long. Like I said, I'm going to do a live segment. Just know that this is open for conversation as far as how what I call hyperfeminism, maybe other people have coined this term as well, that's happening in this decade, right? This time frame. When you have these feminists out here who are literally saying screw men, and I didn't really know this was going on to this extent until some of the gentlemen in the comments pointed it out to me. And that brings me to another point, guys. What are you watching? What are you paying attention to? And what are you giving your energy to? Because if you're watching certain social media and certain forms of mass media that are always depicting women as hyper feminists who hate men, then you're going to end up thinking all women hate men, as what I've seen from some of the comments. But the problem with that is this media is not showing women that are way more open-minded, right? Even just for the discussion. They might want the right to vote, of course, and the right for equal pay, but they too might be questioning the roles of men and women, and has this hyper-feminist movement caused harm to the male-female relationship and marriage, right? Because it's really a tricky issue. Please don't assume that all women think that way. There was a comment where it's really sad. He thought that all women thought that all men were disposable. And it really felt like he was even writing this from a place of hurt. And I'm just like, oh my God, if this is what a lot of men are thinking, that women just think they're disposable and a worthless piece of you-know-what, I guess this world is coming to a sad place if that's what you are being trained to believe. It's not true. Step outside of the box of what you're watching. Google some other things or hashtag some other things on YouTube, because trust me, I know for a fact from some of the people I follow that all women don't think that way. So for you guys who seem like you have a little bit of optimism or hope, and you're kind of just sharing with me, you know, if you get a divorce, sometimes she takes all your money, what you've worked for. Know that I have some empathy for you, and I do understand your point of view. But just know, all women are not feminist, and it's really just more about wanting to be treated with respect. And I think because in a certain type of patriarchal society, a lot of women were not being treated with respect, right? We know what that's all about. We don't need to get into that. Well, yeah, you're going to get a bunch of women who start fighting in the extreme other direction. The problem with going in that other direction is they've abandoned certain things that might be deemed as feminine, and then throwing it out the window, like, I'm not going to do that because I'm a feminist, and how dare you ask me to cook a proper meal? Right? I don't know. Me personally, I love to cook. I cook for myself, so I cook for other people. I, don't believe in eating like garbage because you're single or because you're not single or because you're a working woman. So I'm coming from a different perspective anyway. Not only do I not, believe in that and love to just cook in general, but I'm someone who loves things like flowers and pretty things. So someone might consider me a little bit more feminine, but that doesn't mean I'm just going to be someone's doormat either, right? So there is that balance. So I think men and women need to really have a discussion, a respectful discussion. And I'll say it one more time. Thank you for the gentleman who came into the comment section and really did bring some insightful information. It's funny. Now I see why my favorite YouTubers ramble on for 3 hours. It's really easy to just keep talking when you have no interruptions and you're just spitting thoughts and things off the top of the dome. I kind of like it, right? I get it. I'll do a live video later. I don't know when. Maybe let's shoot for something like Wednesday evening. See if maybe I'm live. Follow me. This is probably the last time, or I take that back. In the live video, I may use the hashtag MGTOW, but just to avoid some of these really pathetic losers, I'm probably not going to use that hashtag anymore. And on that note, again, this channel is not all about MGTOWs, or for that matter, even male and female dynamics. I just want to talk about things that I think about, right? Some of which range from being very controversial to maybe midline controversial to something very lighthearted, like how to marinate or smoke some salmon. Like, please don't, if you subscribe to me or if you're going to be checking for me, don't think every video is going to be about this. This is just coincidence that my first video that I labeled MGTOW got so many views that I'm running away with it because I do want monetization. So those of you on the feed talking about she just wants monetization, again, yeah, you idiot. What are you thinking? That's like saying someone goes to work because they want to get paid. What is wrong with you? It's two reasons. I'm basically showing my thought process and having a discussion that I'd probably want to have even if YouTube didn't monetize, right? Even if we couldn't make money. But at the same time, if you think that I don't want views so I can get some advertisers, you're crazy. So bring on the views. Even those of you that want to like talk a bunch of garbage with your thumbs down, bring it on, because all you're bringing on is more traffic for me to make some money. So thanks again for all that. Stay tuned for the live video. I do plan to do at some point. And think about what I said as far as just respect and relationships, and also just honoring who you really are, which I think if most people truly honor who they are and don't follow everything they think they're supposed to be on TV, most people might find that they really do like being what we think of as feminine or masculine. And again, I can just talk forever because a lot of women, man, you're just not letting men be men and feel like men. And that's one more thing before I go, because I did have this point about the Cosby Show. While Claire definitely held her position and would never be run over like a doormat by Cliff, she's also not someone on the show who would open the door for Cliff. Cliff would always open the door for her. There are just certain things that we don't have to get our panties all in a bunch about because a man tries to do something what he may have grown up as traditionally being a man or being respectful to women. So when you bitch about everything, like, I can open the door myself, I can do this myself, I can drill this myself, I can, whatever, make my money and I can do bad by myself. Well, now you're just setting up this really disgusting formula where the man does probably feel worthless and probably does feel like you think he's just disposable, because what is he good for? Women, even if you can do it for yourself, because maybe you should be able to, God forbid anything happens to your man, can you just be a little bit more like laid back, like tone it down? Everything doesn't have to be about the angry woman. You know, it's disgusting, and honestly, I'm a little annoyed because, like I said, you're ruining it for certain women who don't even want to be in that category. You know, I love the idea of doing what I love for money, right? If I should have to have a job, but let's not get it twisted. If someone was like, oh, here's this really gorgeous $1 million home and your job is to make it as beautiful as you possibly can, do not think I would be upset at that concept. Don't. Just don't. I'm going to leave it at that. For real, I'm going to leave it at that. Check me out for the live video. It'll probably be Tuesday or Wednesday evening, right? Because now I'm getting a little addicted to this YouTube thing and I have to watch it. But I am going to go live at some point so that we can have a conversation directly with some of your comments. Enjoy the rest of your day, right? Peace and respect.